Well, good morning. Here we are, 4 or 5 days from the end of the constitutional end of our regular session, and 250,000 Minnesotans who got federal unemployment benefits are facing a tax deadline on Monday. And frankly, if the legislature does not act, Minnesotans who were displaced workers by no fault of their own are going to be taxed and have to pay in out of pocket on those federal benefits. We have offered this provision. We tried to bring a bill to the House floor to do this. We told them to disconnect it from their request for tax increases. But if Minnesotans do not get this tax relief by Monday, this will fall squarely on the governor's shoulders and House Democrats' shoulders, who are blocking and insisting that we increase taxes on Minnesotans who were displaced workers, and they're doing that to hold those people and their dollars hostage for a tax increase, and it's absolutely unconscionable. In addition to the UI benefits, over 200,000 Minnesota businesses received PPP loans. They were required under the requirements of that federal loan that if they wanted that loan to be forgiven, which most of them did, that they must spend all of those dollars. They were not allowed to set aside money to pay taxes on those dollars. Unfortunately, Minnesota law didn't foresee this, and under Minnesota law, those businesses are being taxed on those dollars as if it was income. I think everybody thinks that is wrong, and wants those dollars to be given to those people tax-free as aid from the federal government to struggling or closed businesses. And we think it's important that happens. That deadline has already passed. Those business filing deadlines for many of those business owners was March 15th. If any of them were LLCs, those taxes are going to be due on May 17th, on Monday, along with the personal income taxes. And we think that it's absolutely unconscionable that the governor and House Democrats are holding Minnesotans who were suffering as a result of COVID, holding them hostage to get tax increases at a time when we have a record surplus of surplus dollars in the state of Minnesota. We do not need these tax dollars. They should not be taxed. I believe that Democrats know that, but we think it's absolutely unconscionable that they are holding these people hostage to try to get tax increases. Representative Davids that is the lead on the tax conference committee, and he'd like to weigh in as well.
Thank you, Leader Daudt. And if you take a map of the Midwest, you will see that Minnesota is the only state that is taxing PPP and taxing the unemployment benefits. We as House Republicans, and especially on the tax committee, have been very clear back in January on the PPP, in March on the unemployment, because that's when we kind of knew where we were, saying we need to get this done. The Senate acted on a tripartisan basis and passed this relief. And again, Minnesota is the only state in the Midwest that is going to be taxing these these benefits. So here we are, a few days before the end of session. Go back to tax committee where I promised the chairman. Now, I'm a former tax chairman, and I know you don't just bring tax bills to the House floor. What can possibly go wrong with that? But I guaranteed the chairman that the Republicans would stand down and offer no amendments. The problem with bringing tax-related provisions to the floor is it creates a flurry of amendments. It creates some real problems. But we guaranteed the chairman that Republicans would stand down to get these through. On the House floor, we tried to bring up the Senate bill that passed 55-12 on a tripartisan basis. So with us not getting this done, this is not a tax the rich thing. This is a hurt the working poor thing. May 17th is tax filing deadline this year, and we have a lot of Minnesotans that are going to be hurt because the governor in the House DFL would not act. Some months ago, and I don't know how many times we were assured when we bring it up on the House floor that we need to do this, what would the chairman get up and say? He would say, we have plenty of time to do this. There is no urgency. Well, here we are on, let's see, May 12th, I'm feeling an urgency. And we have to get this done. We can get this done. No shenanigans on the House floor. Let's just get this done. Let's bring the Senate bill up, which passed 55-12. Let's pass that. Let's make it even better. Then, of course, the big issue right now is, well, we don't know if these federal funds can be used for this. Well, it was very clear yesterday in the ruling or the advice of the IRS that we can use federal funds for tax conformity. The money is there. It's not like, oh, it has to be a priority over here, a priority over here. The money is there. So, Governor, let's show some leadership here. House Democrats, let's do the right thing. And we're not saying the entire tax bill, we're not saying negotiations on this or that. Just take care of the PPP and the unemployment. Thank you.
With that, we'll take some questions if you've got them.
The Senate bill doesn't exempt the entirety of the unemployment benefits as would be allowed under the federal law. Does that fall short in your view too?
Well, that's why I said we could do
Step
more.
here.
I'm sorry. That's why I said we could take the Senate bill and do more. That's what I was referring to. We need to all the way.
I think, I think the Senate bill does not do all of the UI stuff. We believe that's important. On the PPP, it's my understanding that exempting 10,400 is that the number, or 10,200?
That's the UI.
That's what
that's the UI.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's the UI piece. It's my understanding that piece, that what the federal government did is the appropriate amount that would not cause any unintended consequences, or encouraging people to stay out of work or tax people that shouldn't be taxed. I think it's kind of common perception on both sides of the aisle that that's the number that we should be doing. The Senate bill did not do that. We support doing that fully. And we have all along. Our position has been all along. We tried to bring that bill to the floor early on in session because we knew how important this was. We knew these deadlines were going to sneak up. We also at the time warned people because we knew Democrats were holding these provisions hostage. And it sounds like some tactical thing at the Capitol that you hold this bill hostage for that one. This isn't holding bills hostage. These are people who got they were displaced workers. They were out of work. They received a supplement to their unemployment insurance. Our Department of Revenue in the state of Minnesota made a decision, a conscious decision at that time, not to withhold Minnesota income tax from that federal supplement. So now what's happening when these people are going to file their taxes is they're getting a rude awakening that now they actually have to pay out of pocket to the federal government, or not to the federal government, to the state income tax on those dollars. And it's really, with all that Minnesota businesses and all that Minnesota workers have been through in this last year, this is just the blow that they do not need. And unfortunately, Governor Walz and House Democrats just don't care about Minnesotans.
Do you think taxes are really still on the table? I mean, it's a word that I haven't heard.
The taxes have been off the table since the day we got the revenue forecasts and the federal dollars that said we were going to have. Now it's a $4.4 billion surplus. I mean, this is, in modern history, that's the largest surplus anybody can remember. $4.4 billion of surplus money, and Democrats are still grasping onto that's not enough. We need to raise taxes more on Minnesotans. It's that in itself is unconscionable, but the Senate Majority Leader has been incredibly clear, as we have as well. There will be no tax increases this year, and not just because we would normally always be against tax increases, but because we should agree together that after all the things that Minnesotans have been through this last year, that the last thing we need to do is take more money out of their budgets at a time when we do not need it. We have a surplus of dollars in the state budget, larger than we've seen in modern history. It's the last time we should be even talking about raising taxes. And to think that that's the issue that's holding up the end of session at this point because Democrats won't let that go is just unconscionable. Yes.
I don't mean off the table for you. I mean off the table, off the table. Ds have not mentioned the word taxes for the last several weeks. They didn't even mention it Monday.
It's my understanding that there are offers that are going back and forth between the Democrats and the Republicans. Obviously, it's the Speaker and the Majority Leader in the Senate. It's my understanding that up until right now, the Democrats are still offering tax increases in their offers. I haven't received any information that that's not the case. I have not seen the offers with my own eyes, but I keep asking, are the Democrats still offering tax increases? And the answers that I get are yes. So Democrats are the ones holding things up because they have not realized that at a time when we have a record surplus of $4.4 billion, they still want tax increases, and it's unconscionable.
As you mentioned, the House Republicans, and obviously the Senate passed its own bill, but the House Republicans have been pushing to take action in the House to no avail. I mean, what changes it now, and what makes you think that they will, cede ground on this issue?
Well, my hope is that just for the better good of Minnesotans who are going to have to pay write big checks on Monday, that Democrats would realize, and as we get closer to that deadline on Monday at midnight, my hope is that Democrats realize that this budget isn't coming together, and it doesn't look like we'll finish on time. I think there's also a dynamic that if the governor keeps his emergency powers, which all indications are that he intends to indefinitely, which I think is also wrong, that we will be back here on June 14th, and because we will be called back on June 14th, we don't seem to have the sort of urgency and immediate urgency to get the budget done by Monday at midnight. But unfortunately, the people who will get left behind in this scenario are the people who are being taxed because they kept people employed at their businesses when they didn't have revenue coming in, and they took these PPP loans and had them forgiven. They followed all of the things, the requirements to get them forgiven, and now they're going to have to pay out of their pockets, mortgage their homes, maybe lay their employees off now, and maybe shutter their businesses to pay a tax bill that they should not have to pay. And it's the same thing with displaced workers. These folks were hit hard enough by this pandemic, and the federal government saw as an effort to keep our economy afloat and keep things moving that they would supplement their unemployment benefits by $600 or $300 per week. Our revenue department here in the state of Minnesota made a conscious decision not to withhold taxes from those payments when they sent them out. And frankly, now those people are going to have to pay those things in. Our hope is that Democrats realize that while they have failed to get their job done here at the Minnesota Capitol, that they can at least do this small thing for businesses that went out of their way to keep their employees employed instead of laying them off, and that we as a state don't need to profit off of displaced workers and businesses that were shuttered by this pandemic. And that's what's happening here. I want people to understand that of that $2.8 now it is $billion of money that's coming from the federal government to us, and of our $1.6 billion surplus, that about $600 million of that is the state of Minnesota profiting off of money that's being taken out of the pockets of these shuttered businesses and unemployed, displaced workers. And just think about that and let that set in for a second. And here we are, because we want to hold on, Democrats in the House and our governor wants to hold on to their ideological beliefs that Minnesotans don't pay enough taxes, and especially at a time when they've been so harmed by this pandemic, that they want to hold on to this ideological belief that we're going to make them pay more. Even when we can't get our job done, we're going to hold on to this need for tax increases when we absolutely don't even need the money. This is one, I know I stand here in front of you a lot and try to sell you stuff. This one's an easy one, guys. This really is hurting Minnesotans, and it really is hurting Minnesota businesses. And this is squarely on the shoulders of our governor and House Democrats who are intentionally doing this to these people. And I think it's unconscionable.
To your point about people having to pay money out of pocket, look, reality is the deadline's Monday. Tax software, TurboTax, whatever, none of this is going to get changed by then, right? I mean, what is your hope on how this might work for people, even if you succeed?
Well, thank you for that, and you are correct. It is going to take some time, but the time is now to get this done. We can't continue to delay. Go back and listen to the tax committee tapes, and listen, are they still tapes or what? CDs or DVDs or Blu-rays? I don't know what they are. But go back and listen to the hearings months ago, where the chairman promised that PPP and unemployment would be taken care of. Just not quite yet, but we promise we'll do it. Well, Mr. Chairman, you have 5 days to keep your promise. And as Leader Daudt said, this is not about the global deal, all this. We can use federal funds. We can use federal funds to take care of conformity, and we're not even saying all conformity. We're just saying PPP and unemployment. Let's conform with the feds. Let's do it now. We've been promised time and time again that we would do this. And again, as Leader Daudt said, that this is very limited in scope. It's PPP, and I'd like to do full PPP and full unemployment. It's there. Why aren't we getting this done?
So just to clarify, though, your message to regular people who call you is you're going to yell about the Democrats and the governor, but in the meantime, they got to pay this tax, right?
Well, yes, they have to pay the tax, and that's unfortunate. You're right. The software. If we did it today, if we did it this afternoon, there's not enough time. So you're going to see a lot of extensions unnecessarily. This is so unnecessary. You know, we've been working on the PPP since January. We've been working on the unemployment since March. Why hasn't this been done? Especially when we were promised it would be done. And like I said, we said we would totally stand down. You put this up for a vote on the House floor. Just put it up for a vote, and it'll have 80% of the votes. 80% of the members would support this.
Question. What you know about the state tax system, if I was unemployed and I had to pay the tax, and now I get it back because maybe at some point the legislature has passed forgiveness of that, could those be automatic refunds? Would DOR know how to do that and just send checks, or would I have to fill out a paper for it?
No, they can do this one automatically. We've done that in other areas where something changes, we don't get something done on time. The department just sends checks. They wouldn't have to file anything. Everybody would get a check. That has it coming.
How many of your members do you expect will vote for the marijuana bill tomorrow?
You know, we do have a handful of members that support it. I'm not sure. We haven't caucused it yet. And I think, you know, my guess is we probably have 4 to 6 members that are supportive of it. Potentially could be more, potentially could be less. And I think, you know, there's going to be some amendments filed. And I think depending on how some of those amendments shake out, whether they're adopted or not, you know, could determine who votes for it and who doesn't.
So are you going to get to this as a vote of conscience thing, not a caucus position necessarily?
We don't have a caucus position on it. We have taken caucus positions on very few things this session, and that's kind of a norm for our caucus. If members want to vote for it, they certainly can. We think, you know, and I think the fact that the legalized pot bill is coming to the floor on what is it, tomorrow, that you know, when Minnesotans don't have assurances that that they're not, you know, they're not going to be taxed on their unemployment benefits and their PPP loan forgiveness, it really shows displaced priorities for House Democrats, and it's not a surprise for us, but I hope that Minnesotans are paying attention to what Democrats' priorities are, because there are a lot of Minnesotans, 250,000 because of unemployment benefits, 200,000 plus additional because of PPP loan forgiveness that's being taxed, that are going to be hurt unnecessarily, and what Democrats are doing at the state capitol is rolling a doobie. I mean, that's the reality. That's what they care more about. So there's your line for your
no Senate
right.
File. No Senate file.
Yeah, I mean, and there is no Senate companion that's moving on this. So they're doing this to send a message, but they won't send a message to Minnesotans. And to your earlier question about what do Minnesota tax filers do, because you can't change the software in 5 days. What they would have is they would have assurance and some level of comfort that things are changing and that they may only be out of pocket for a short time on those dollars, or they may have time to file an extension because their tax preparer knows that they wouldn't be getting hit if this bill passed. So they could file an extension, not pay in, file an amendment to their return, and then not have taxes due. I will also say that this is a little broader and a little more far-reaching than just whether or not they have to pay in. There's a lot of Minnesotans, and I know because when I went to file my taxes, my tax preparer, and I think every tax preparer in every one of our districts has been reaching out to us saying, when is this going to get fixed? There's no certainty, and we're sitting on piles of tax returns that we're not filing. And what that means is that these people aren't getting the tax refunds that they would have been getting had their returns been filed because there's uncertainty on how these provisions will be treated. So let's get this money into Minnesotans' pockets. It's what's good for them. They did the right thing. Let's state government, let's Governor Walz and House Democrats, let's do the right thing. You've got 5 days left to do it. It's not too late.
You mentioned that the June potential special session takes a little bit of the pressure off. Beyond UI and PPP, what are some of the things you think that are critical to get done by Monday that you see as potential items that could actually
repeat that one more time? What are the critical things that
to get done by Monday that you see as items that could potentially pass?
You know, I will tell you, back in 2015 when I was the Speaker of the House and Senator Bach was the Senate Majority Leader, we reached joint budget targets over at the governor's residence. We asked the governor to leave the room. We reached that agreement on Friday evening. We asked the governor to leave the room at about 3:30. We had that agreement by about 5:30 between the two of us. We called the governor back into the room. We told him we had agreement between the House and the Senate, and we felt it was important that we go back and get these bills passed. We did a press conference with all of you on the lawn at the residence. We came back to the legislature, and between Friday evening and Monday night, we got a budget done, and we got it on the governor's desk complete. The governor did veto 3 of those bills. But remember, I forget how many there were that were, maybe 9 or 10 bills. That means he signed 6 or 7 bills into law. And it doesn't mean that we didn't work with the governor after that point. We absolutely did. He was involved in the conference committee process and working with our chairs. But it's not too late to get this whole thing done yet this session. I think everybody keeps, the difference is I don't see an urgency to get it done because the governor has to call us back on June 14th. And I'm very disappointed in the negotiations thus far that we haven't been more fruitful. I think if you put Senator Bach and I in a room, we could have this thing wrapped in 2 hours, and I'm not kidding. With a $4.4 billion surplus, I can do this budget on the back of a napkin and have money left over. There's no need for tax increases. You can take care of all of the problems. It's a little, you have to be a little creative to get money into the tails from the current biennium because much of the $4.4 billion is one-time money, but it's no hill for a climber. We can get it done. I have complete confidence in them. And you know what? If they'd open up the closed rooms that they're negotiating in and let some people in with some experience, we could help them get it done.
Have you been involved in the conversations at all, or can you tell us what it's been like from your perspective so far?
0. Which is the same as it was 2 years ago. So, I've talked with Senator Bach. I've talked with Representative Hortman. I've talked with Senator Gazelka, and I get little tidbits of what's happening. That's how I know that yesterday Democrats were still offering tax increases, which I think is kind of shocking since Republicans laid that marker down, 2 months ago that there was no need for tax increases. Everybody knows there's no need for tax increases, and here we are, 5 days away from 500,000 Minnesotans getting taxed unnecessarily. They're still holding on to tax increases.
Making a play to get in the room?
No, but maybe that's a good idea. Maybe we should come up with our own budget.
That's kind of what I was asking. You suggested it.
And I have had other people suggest that to me.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but we're not even to the blow-up phase of negotiations yet. So what's your optimism based on that there could be a deal this session?
I don't have optimism. That's why we're standing here asking Democrats to pass PPP and UI conformity with the federal government so these Minnesotans aren't taxed. I do not have confidence that House Democrats and Governor Walz are going to give up their demand for tax increases and that we will land this plane on time by Monday at midnight. I do not have faith in that. And I do not have faith in that because of their actions. It's kind of shocking they're still holding on to the tax increases. But I'll let all of you chase after them and see if you can get them to comment. I understand they're in the cone of silence, which is, maybe that's what this fence is, the cone of silence. Shutting everybody out of the Capitol I don't think is good either. This fence needs to come down. It needed to come down a long time ago. And let's let people get into the Capitol and watch what's going on and see what's going on so that people can participate in their government. Go ahead.
You can touch on the federal coronavirus and how the money.
Yeah, so Obviously, in the state of Minnesota, we have provisions in statute that say when the state of Minnesota receives aid from the federal government, typically that comes in the way of FEMA dollars for flood relief or, tornadoes or something like that. We have provisions that allow the governor to spend that using a process called the LAC. I remind my members all the time that LAC stands for advisory, the A does, and not appropriation. The legislature has really no oversight over that money, but it's usually in the instance that we get money from FEMA to the tune of $20 or $50 million to help with a natural disaster. I don't think anybody ever envisioned that the state of Minnesota would get $2.8 billion, a number that's equivalent to about 5% of our state's general fund budget, that would come with no strings attached. And so there's a conversation going on about whether the governor thinks he can spend that money without the legislature. He has already taken steps a couple of months ago to start spending that money without legislative appropriation. We think it's absolutely wrong. We think the governor needs to pay a little more attention to the Constitution, and that legislatures, the House and the Senate, must appropriate that $2.8 billion. And it needs to happen because of the oversight, the hearings, the transparency that comes with the legislature spending that money. I think we saw this week a really bad example of what happens when you let the governor spend money without legislative oversight. And you saw these contracts being paid out to political allies for purposes that really I think are very questionable. Paying radio stations to carry his news conferences. I wonder if all of you feel like you should be paid to carry his stuff, and how shocking that sounds. But those are the things that happened with those federal dollars, and I think those are exactly the reasons why we need to make sure that the legislature has hearings, that there is transparency, and the legislature appropriates those federal dollars. So I actually think that's the biggest issue in the negotiations. I understand that earlier this week the governor made a comment publicly somewhere to some group of people. I haven't tracked it down yet, but I understand that he has said he does not intend to spend that money. This will be a shocker to you. I do not believe him. He has already taken steps to spend some of that money. He has already submitted the requests to the LAC to spend some of those dollars. The LAC, during the legislative session, can block the spending of that money. But as soon as we leave on May 17th at midnight, that ability for us to block the spending of those dollars ends, and the governor can spend those pretty much unfettered with just a small speed bump of about a 2-week or 10-day or 2-week delay, and then it will allow him to spend those dollars on whatever he wants. And we think that's absolutely inappropriate, should not happen. And I assure you, I've spoken with the Senate Majority Leader, I assure you if the governor does that, it will not make budget negotiations any easier in June. And I know the Senate leader has said that likely the governor will only get a base budget. He will not get anything above a base budget if he spends any of that $2.8 billion. So it is a big deal, and we're watching very closely what the governor's doing.
Going to the fishing opener?
I don't know. It's my understanding that I don't know that the governor's going, actually. If he is, he has not invited any of the legislative leaders along, which is abnormal. This is the first time I guess last year it was canceled, but the first time in 8 years that I haven't fished with the governor. I'm actually thinking about going up myself, just because that community has made an incredible investment, and it's such a an economic boom for those communities, and I think just a great social atmosphere for those communities. So I'm thinking about going up myself. Haven't made that determination, but at the rate that things are happening around here, it doesn't look like we'll be needed in St. Paul. So, and I don't know that I heard yesterday that none of the legislative leaders are headed up there. And they all confirmed with us that nobody's been invited by the governor. So anyway, any last questions? Sounds good. Thank you all very much. And